Okay, great. So, hi everyone. Welcome to our WPLN's very first partner series this afternoon. I'm Larissa Martinez, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of Women's Public Leadership Network. And for those that may not know, WPLN is an organization that recently launched. We're a new nonpartisan nonprofit whose aim is to educate, organize, and inspire center-right women to seek public office. And as some of you may have seen, we had a pretty big announcement yesterday, which is that we are investing $500,000 in states across the country that are training center-right women to run for office and seek political appointment. And today we have a really special guest, Dawn Crandall, who is the founder of one of our grantees in Michigan. And so today we're going to learn a little bit more about Dawn, her background in the state, hear a little bit about some of the challenges in Michigan, and then about her new organization. So with that, Dawn Crandall, you'll see here to the other side of me, depending on which way you're looking. And Dawn is currently the political affairs director at the Home Builders Association of Michigan. But she is also, interestingly, the vice chair of another one of our grantees, which is Rise New Mexico out in New Mexico. And she is the founder and executive director of the new organization, She Holds the Key, that is still getting off the ground. So we're so pleased that she's here. Dawn, if you wouldn't mind just giving a smidgen more about your experience on the ground in Michigan, and then we'll get started.
Great, thanks for having me, Larissa. As the political affairs director for the Home Builders Association of Michigan, it's my job to endorse and help elect candidates to office that have the view of home builders and our mission. But on top of that, I also back in 2007 became a founding member of the Michigan Excellence in Public Service Series, which is a training program for Republican women. And in that circle, in that space, we train women. And currently we have 6 of our graduates serving in the state house. And from that, we've spun off and created She Holds the Key, which will train center-right women to get them acclimated and their feet kind of in the water and get them trained up to run at either local levels or at the state level as well. Because as we all know, it's a little bit harder to get center-right women engaged in the process. And we feel that there's a need for that space in the state of Michigan to complement our MEPS program. So we're very excited. We have a great board that's come on, and we look forward to getting started and reaching out to different universes of women who are leaders in their community and get them engaged in the process.
Well, as you know, we're so excited for the work that you are going to be doing in Michigan. But can you give us a little bit more background on how the organization came together, kind of how it came about, its genesis?
Yeah, so about a year ago, I was having lunch with one of our MEPS grads who happens to be serving in the state legislature right now. And the conversation turned around to how women are really going to hold the key to, at that point, to the upcoming election. And we are having the conversation of how do we reach those women who aren't engaged in the political process, right? Those women who are very busy, they go about their daily lives, they're probably leaders in their own community, and how do we tap into that and how do we get them engaged, because they are going to be the key to elections moving forward. And within a week, State Representative Brana Colley had 30 women in her district in a big barn that we hosted an event and talked about kind of the higher level, right? Like if you're living in your own community and you're engaged, you kind of live in that bubble, but you may not see the bigger picture of what's taking place in the state politically and why it's important for women to not only get engaged and involved and run, but support candidates that are going to be good for the community and build kind of that bench of up and comings. In Michigan, we have the strongest term limits in the country. You can serve in the state house 3 terms at 2 years each for a total of 6 years, and in the state senate for 2 4-year terms for a total of 8. And once you've accomplished that, there's no setback. You're just done. And so term limits went into play back in 1996. They kicked in here. And so, you're always kind of looking for that next candidate because we've got such a huge turnover. This year in our state house, we're going to have at a minimum 26 newly elected out of 110, and in 2018, 45 out of 110 state legislators were brand new to our process. And so we constantly have that churning of new people coming in, which is great job security if you're, in the trade association, because you have to train them and educate them to your issues. But you're always looking for that next candidate, and that's what we're hoping to do, is to train up some conservative women to get them engaged.
Yeah, which is fantastic. So I know that you're still new and kind of getting off the ground and strategizing what you think the best kind of next steps are. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you see as the upcoming goals that you would like, or any programming that you think needs to happen sooner rather than later, given November's election is obviously sucking a lot of the oxygen out of the air for this topic. Just kind of curious if you have any firsthand looks that you can provide.
So what we're looking at doing is creating training programs that would target conservative women who want to run at the local level and at the state level and in a nonpartisan race as well. Even though the end goals are all the same, like the campaign plans are all similar, I think when you're speaking to women in those different kind of circles, you have to target it a little bit more to make them more comfortable on what they're walking into. So even though a campaign plan for a state house race or a state senate race is very similar, like the goal is 50+1 to win, right? You still need your message. I think in terms of the scaling up, the higher you go, it's easier if we can have that conversation more on if women are specifically looking to run at a local office, to gear that message to a local office campaign and what that looks like versus a state house or a state senate race or a congressional race or a nonpartisan race. And so that we're really targeting the message and reaching out into even different trade associations who may have center right women who are leaders in their own right, to get them engaged and move in. So we're looking at some different networking opportunities and reaching out to different groups to have that conversation and build even the diversity within the center right women's side to get more women engaged.
Mm-hmm. So one of the challenges, and this is just a question that came to mind as we're talking, is obviously Michigan is a pretty big state, and there's a lot of diversity of geography and challenges in terms of getting into some of the more rural communities. I'm just curious if, since you've lived in Michigan all your life, kind of where you see kind of the specific challenges in terms of outreach, and where you think you'd like to start targeting first.
Well, I think we have challenges across our state based on that, because we are such a diverse state, from urban cores to agricultural to rural to cities like Detroit that have a different population. Detroit's coming back. We've got some growth going on in there. And I think, honestly, when we first started talking about this a year ago, the goal was to actually go in and host She Holds the Key events in 10 areas around the state. And then COVID hit, which, kind of changed things in Michigan. But I do think because of COVID and this not new technology, but people are more comfortable with the Zoom platform, that it's going to open up even more opportunities for us to reach in and partner with different groups to at least get our name out there, talk about what we have to offer, and then build out some training programs to bring women into that fold and get them, kind of get their toes in the water and get them involved in the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the positive side effects of what's going on is just getting used to the working from home and being able to hop on a call, sometimes a little easier than leaving the house and having to deal with it. So since you've been involved in politics for a very long time, I say that because she's since she was a child, but you are someone who's very experienced, kind of seen all the different waves, all the different kind of dynamics that have come about over the years. And just from your experience, what do you think actually makes the biggest impact when it comes to the components of either training or recruiting, when it comes to helping women get there and win, given the fact that you do have members that went through your other organization in the legislature right now?
Right. I think part of it is to men who want to run, and I mean no offense to the male gender, but like if a man says he wants to run for office, everybody kind of jumps on board and says that's a great idea. What can we do to help? I'll hold an event for you. We'll raise money. And then if a woman says it, you find some of like her her circle will be like, are you sure? And I think part of it is because women have, tend to be, if they have children, they tend to be the ones that, make sure that they're fed, make sure that they have clean clothes, make sure that there's groceries. And I think for our other organization, and even for She Holds the Key, the goal really is to hold and have that safe place where women can test their message, can get honest, sometimes critical feedback, but it's all out of a place of love and caring, to make sure that they are the best candidate when they get out on, either on a doorstep or in a town hall, which this year we didn't have. And the other part of that is to really look at, because of our involvement in politics and our board has, a diverse involvement in terms of different levels, how we can then assist them in that process. So this year, for instance, in the state of Michigan, and we just had our primary on Tuesday, because of COVID, our Secretary of State sent out absentee ballot requests to every registered voter in our state of Michigan.
Huh.
So what that meant is we were looking at returns. Many of the races were won in the AV world. But that AV world, which typically starts and is limited, was really if you didn't run an AV absentee voter race as opposed to a ground game, because you couldn't run a ground game, it was really hard to win. So as looking through results around the state, a lot of candidates may not have won on election day at the polls, but they won because they had a strong mail program or a strong phone banking program that still allowed them to interact with voters. And if candidates didn't have that, they typically didn't win. So how can we help them adjust to the political arena that's taking place today based on the knowledge that we have? Because one of my favorite sayings is for candidates is you don't know what you don't know. And so how do we bring that knowledge to a candidate to assist them in their campaign plan and changing maybe the typical campaign because of COVID this year? And make it a winnable campaign.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm just going to pause for a brief second to just remind people that are watching that if you have any questions, to please enter them in the comment box, and we will take some questions at the end. So anything that's burning, please let us know. So just going back for a moment, again, kind of looking over the past couple of years, what have you seen that has changed in terms of wanting to get more women engaged? Because obviously there's a lot of discussion around the amount of women that are putting themselves forward and kind of what is driving that. And I'm just curious, for Michigan specifically, what do you feel is either driving it, or where do you see it not moving?
Well, I can say, and I did a really quick check before I came on, just to see where we were with numbers, because we are seeing more women get elected in the Michigan legislature, which is great, and on both sides, quite honestly, because I do think that the more voices and the more opinions on issues you have makes for a better policy issue, right? And a policy conversation. And so I did a little checking, and 43 out of 110 legislators in our Michigan State House are women currently. 26 are Democrats, 17 are Republicans. 6 of those 17 are MAPS grads, which we're very excited about. But going into the 2020 cycle, 8 of those were termed out and not able to seek re-election because of term limits in our state, and 1 left the legislature early to run for Congress. And so you're starting to see some of those numbers turn over. And I think where we are starting to see, although we're not balanced on both sides, I think the Democrats have been better at recruiting women and getting them engaged. And I think it's just harder for conservative women to make that kind of step into that world. For one, if you're in a state where politics is very divisive, and it can be very negative, and as we're starting She Holds the Key, we didn't see a lot of that in our primaries because of COVID. So you didn't have the debates, you didn't have all of that. But I think it makes some women, even on both sides, kind of step back and go, do I really want to subject myself or my family to what could come? And at the end of the day, I think it's going to take both sides to be able to come together and have the conversation and bring civility back into the process. And I always say, because I also sit on a national board that's also nonpartisan, but tends to lean a little bit to the other side. If I don't walk in the room with my values, how do we ever connect those bridges and make those relationships so that we can have conversations with both sides and not make it so personal? And so I think some of that is starting to change in Michigan. I hope it's starting to change a little bit more across the country. But I think the way that happens is when you bring more women to the table and you can have that conversation, because I do believe that women actually want to work together to find a solution, where maybe, again, no offense to the men, may just want to find the solution. And so I think at the end of the day, the more voices you can have at the table, that makes for a better process.
So just out of curiosity, since you do have term limits in place, do you find that it's part of a discussion when a woman is termed out to try and find a woman to take her place, depending on which party she's a part of? I'm just curious if that's part of the recruitment decisions being made. And again, and I know that we're technically, well, not technically, we are nonpartisan, but obviously when it comes to the legislature, you have to pick one side. So I'm just kind of curious for both parties what you've heard and what you've seen in terms of that effort.
Yeah, I know on the Republican side for our MAPS program, we did have a couple of women who, one will be termed out at the end of this year. One was not, but they did recommend a couple of women to go through our training process. I know on the Democrat side, I've had conversations with some of their, potential leaders that they also want to get more women engaged in the process on their side. And I think it is starting to become, I think that topic is starting to rise a little bit, especially as we get more women elected. I hear it on both sides that they really want their seat to continue to be represented by a female, and on the R side and the D side. And so I do think that conversation is starting to take place a little bit more. Not quite where it needs to be when you engage the males in the process necessarily, but on the female side, you do hear a lot of, and not even in their seat if they're termed out, I'm hearing it like they want to help engage a woman in another seat that might be open in our state. And so I am hearing it more on both sides.
Okay. And because we have brought up the men a few times, not that we need to go down that path entirely, but I am curious if you are seeing, because again of the term limits and the fact that there is a constant need for recruitment and finding those women and men that out there to fill these seats, if you're seeing more men kind of come around to this idea of also trying to encourage more women and seek out leaders in their districts or their communities that could potentially move into a leadership position. I'm just curious if you're starting to see that.
We're actually seeing in the Michigan legislature, because of the way term limits works, because it's such a short time, in terms of the leadership in the Republican side and the Democrat side, you are seeing more women run for leadership, which is awesome. You're seeing more women be put as committee chairs or committee vice chairs, which is a great thing to see. Last session or 2 sessions ago, we had our first female appropriations chair. So we are making strides in terms of lifting women up into those positions. On the Democrat side, it is presumed that a woman will be the leader of the Democrat caucus. We have one currently on the Dem side. We have women on the Republican side that are running for key leadership positions. And so I think if we can start within that process and showcase that women are being appointed to good committee chairs and seeing them run and win in leadership, that helps us engage more women into the process and say, you're not just going to be window dressing at a press conference when we have one, that we're going to move you to the front and hope that it, draws attention that yes, we have women. And it gives them a stronger voice in terms of leadership as well.
So since you mentioned it, your elections, your primaries were held on Tuesday.
Yes.
So just I know you're paying attention to a lot of the seats and a lot of things that are moving, but What trends did you see this election cycle when it came to women that have run and are winning in these primaries? And then what is kind of the setup going into November?
So what we saw in terms of incumbents who were running for reelection, every incumbent, male or female, was reelected to the state house in the primary. Not reelected to the state house, but they won their primaries, which is great. And I wonder, sometimes I look at things in a view of COVID, if that was because campaigns had changed so much. So our incumbents won their primaries. We did have a lot more women on both sides running for state rep.
Okay.
But I do think that COVID presented different challenges. So if you didn't have, especially if you were running in an open seat, if you hadn't built your kind of your base and your financials by March of this year, you were going to have a really tough time, because it was difficult to get out on doors, because we were put in stay home, stay safe for quite a while in Michigan. And if you didn't have the money to mail, it was hard to get your message out. Because, under normal circumstances, it's a lot of time and effort and mail and phone banking to be a viable candidate. And then you take the big events away that you can't reach as many people at one time. But we did see more women get engaged in the process, and hopefully, we're going to have new lines drawn for the 2022 election cycle. And I hope candidates are looking at that and saying, maybe the district will be different where I am right now, or maybe something will change. Because of term limits, you see, especially we have 2 state senators right now that are running for local office. Their terms aren't up until 2022. But if they win their seats, that's going to open up 2 Republican seats in our state Senate, which means you're going to have people in the House may look to jump to run for those, which starts the trickle down domino effect of open seats in the Senate. And then depending who wins that, we could have open seats in 2021 in the House as well. And so it's one of those things that I hope people stay engaged in the process, because the opportunity will come. We actually had a woman who graduated from our MAPS program. She ran, she's not termed out yet, so it hasn't been 6 years, but she lost the primary, and then we had a huge scandal in Michigan. I'm not going to go into it. And that seat opened up, but because she continued to be engaged in social media and in the community, and she continued to promote things that she was going to in the community, when she had that 90-day window for a special election, she was ready to go. And so I would encourage women that if you weren't successful in the primary, or in your race, to still stay engaged, because sometimes you never know when an opportunity is going to be there. And I always say, prepare for tomorrow today, because you never know what tomorrow is going to bring.
So true. I feel like that could be a bumper sticker. I like it. I like the wisdom. I like the wisdom. That's kind of for our kind of agenda, but there is a question that someone posed that I wanted to ask you. Does Michigan have women in leadership positions in the political parties?
Yes. So both of our state party chairs for the Republicans and the Democrats are women. And then if you look at even our executive branch, our governor, our attorney general, and our secretary of state are all currently held by Democrat women. And our leaders in the House and Senate, in terms of our Senate Majority Leader and our Speaker, are both male, but we do have women in key positions in both chambers and as chairs of committees. So
yeah, and your governor is definitely out there too. In terms of, I think a lot of people around the country are very well aware that she's been making a lot of very tough decisions for the state in this time. But it's always fun to see women in executive positions like that, especially during this time, and seeing how they're managing. So
yes.
Yeah. So the next one is, what's the most important advice you would give future candidates?
Oh, that's a good question. I think
yourself, Dawn. No, I'm just there's a lot, I'm sure, but
yeah. I really think, if you're gonna walk into politics, and I say this to candidates all the time, males and females, make sure that you find, like, it's a serious and it's a busy and it's a challenging thing, right? You're going to spend a lot of your time meeting voters, connecting, developing your message, maybe finding your voice. And, win or lose, I do think opportunities come out of that. Like, I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason. And so I think if you can build a strong team, and when I say strong team, I mean, make sure you have somebody on your team that is going to tell it to you like it needs to be. And it may seem really harsh at the time, that advice that you're getting, but you don't want people who are just going to be surrounded, that are going to agree with everything you say. So find those people that you can build or have a good trust with, that you can bounce your ideas off of, and that they're really going to give you that critical feedback that's going to make you a better candidate and make your team a better team. And just realize that in the era of, these, that you're always also have the potential to be filmed. So you're really going to have to make sure that when you're out, that you choose your words wisely, and that you just really put your best foot forward, and have fun with it. Like, if you're going to run for office and you're just miserable every day doing it, it's probably not the thing for you. You should be able to come away with some great stories of people that you've met that maybe have inspired you while you're on the campaign trail, and build them into your network. And just, I always call it my sticky web. And however many people you can bring in, you never know when somebody you may meet campaigning is going to circle back in your life at another time. And I think it's really important. I always tell, women who take classes from me, bridges are meant to be crossed, not burned. And yes, there are going to be days you want to throw somebody off a bridge, but 5 years in your life, they may come back and be in a different position that you can work together and, have a mutual beneficial, relationship. And so I always look at the positive, and make sure that you just build a good team, and that you realize there are going to be some challenges, but there's always going to be home games and there's always going to be away games. It's the way it works.
Again, just loving it. Loving the one-liners that are happening. It's so fun. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for taking time today. As you know, we're thrilled to have you part of our network, and we're thrilled to be able to at least get you some seed capital to really start to build out your programs there, because I think
we appreciate it.
Yeah, it is needed. And I hope everyone at home that either is in Michigan or knows women in Michigan that would be interested in this program to please follow WPLN on all of our social media channels, sign up for our newsletter. As I mentioned, She Holds the Key is still in the process of setting up their website and kind of getting their ducks in a row, so to speak. So we will be including their website when it's live on our website and be sending an update. So, so if you want to stay engaged, please sign up with us, and we will make sure that you get that information. But thank you for spending some time with us today on Thursday. And please stay with us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.